Watching TV has changed over time. Streaming has become the new norm. That's why Golden State Media Concepts television podcast dives headfirst to the world of cord cutting. Want to be on the loop of what's hot in Netflix? Or if it's not a preference, what about original shows in Hulu? We've got you covered. Join us as we fill in the blank and talk about movies to stream and what show you should be binging. This is the Golden State Media Concepts television podcast.
All right. Here we go. 17th. Hello and welcome to the GSMC television podcast. We're part of the mighty GSMC podcast network, and I'm your host in the middle of a record-breaking 22-day, 90-plus degree heat streak in the DMV. It is hot. My name's Howard Fletcher, and I am joined, as always, by my trusted engineer, Jack the Black Pug. And we're positively honored and thrilled to be here with you once again. It's an exciting day. We're looking forward to another show. If you're new to the show, I'd like to give you a very warm welcome. I thank you for giving us a try. You have a lot of media out there that you can choose from. Everything from YouTube to thousands of podcasts to all kinds of things. So the fact that you picked us out of that myriad of choices, we are really flattered. We appreciate it. We aim to please, so stick around. I'm sure you're going to hear something that you like. We want you to keep coming back. And if you're one of our loyal return listeners, you know how we feel about you. We're amazed you keep coming back, and you're truly the reason that I am here and Jack is here. So let's have some fun. We have another jam-packed show for you today. Hannah, well, she gets another season at Amazon to break some necks. Disney Plus is shaping up to be, well, it's pretty much the Jedi Channel. We're going to tell you about that. More movie theaters shut down worldwide. You know I'm going to have something to say about that. I'll always bring you news as it breaks, and a lot of stuff has been happening lately, so you can, look forward to that. And I'm working on sussing out some more information for you about the coming Bat universe on HBOMax. I'm excited about that. But first, let's get started with some breaking Stringer Bell news. Idris Elba and his Green Door Pictures production company have signed a first-look deal at Apple. Under the deal, Elba and Green Door will produce both series and features for Apple's streaming platform, Apple TV+. Now, this is the big thing now if you're in the entertainment business. In fact, either you're just an actor or you're an actor with a production company. And if you're not an actor with a production company, it's like you're not even really in the business. All these guys are putting, and I mean, I say guys, I'm using it generically. There are a lot of women who are forming production companies, which I'm very happy about. And there's just a lot of actors, let me put it that way, who have production companies using their name as a brand. And they are signing first look deals and about to produce a lot of content. Now, Elba has produced some things before in the past under Green Door. Some of them have not been the best, but, he's new to this. And while they weren't the best, they certainly were far from the worst. And, I judged them kind of harshly because I think Idris Elba is quite talented and I expected a lot from him. So had this stuff been produced by someone else, I might have said it was all right. And it was all right. But I expect a lot of things from him. I think he worked out a lot of the kinks on his early productions, and I think that's why Apple saw some value in what he's going to do. Idris Elba is an actor, producer, director, and a musician. He's known for his starring roles in films like The Fast and the Furious Presents Hobbs and Shaw, Mandela, Long Walk to Freedom, Beasts of No Nation, which was rough. That was on Netflix. Excellent flick, hard to watch. And multiple films in the Marvel Cinematic Universe as the character Heimdall. Yes, He was a Norseman. Not just a Norseman, a Norse god in Asgard. Now, if you know Idris Elba, that is some good acting. He also starred in the critically acclaimed BBC series Luther, which I really loved. Ruth Wilson, too. Loved both of them. Which earned him a Golden Globe Award and multiple Emmy nominations, as well as HBO's The Wire, which I am currently doing a rewatch podcast called Vino and Convo with Fletch and Couch. It's on Apple Podcasts and anywhere else you get your podcast, wherever you got this podcast. But that's a little plug for my other podcast. You should check us out if you're a fan of The Wire and of Idris Elba. Elba founded Green Door in 2013. The company's credits include the comedy In the Long Run, created and featuring Elba as part of an ensemble cast. The company also produced Elba's Netflix comedy series Turn Up Charlie. Now, that was one of the productions that I said that I saw that I didn't think was the best, but it wasn't bad. That's what's critical. And like I said, I think it's a learning curve. And I know he's going to put out some good content because he's been in good productions. And if you're paying attention when you're working on a quality production, you can do it again. So, from going from Burns and Simon on The Wire and then working in the Marvel Universe, he's learned a lot. And also working in the Fast and Furious universe. Those are franchise films. Those people know what they're doing. So I look forward to some quality work coming out of Green Door. Other credits include the short form shows The Idris Takeover and 5x5, the Manchester International Festival, and Young Vic Theatre production Tree, and the upcoming feature Concrete Cowboy. I don't know anything about Concrete Cowboy. I got to look up that and give you all some information about that. Now, Idris Elba is the latest high-profile star to sign a deal with Apple. Others include Oprah Winfrey, Alfonso Cuarón, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, Justin Lin, Carrie Aaron, Justin Caitmus, Lee Eisenberg, Monica Beletsky, I don't know who that is, Alana Smith, and Simon Kinberg. It was also announced last week that Apple had signed an overall deal with the Maurice Sendak Foundation. Under that deal, the foundation will develop new projects based on Sendak's books and illustrations. And those of you who don't know who Maurice Sendak is, he's the Where the Wild Things Are guy. So Apple's working on that original content, and as I preach on this show, if you don't have original content, you're not going to attract new subscribers, and that's the name of the game here. So everyone is putting their teams together, trying to get the best free agent talent they can out there, and we're going to see who's going to make it through the playoffs. I think Apple has a good shot. I can't say as much for all the other streamers, but speaking of big streamers who are trying to put together their dream teams, here is some breaking news from a galaxy far, far away. Disney Plus and Lucasfilm will continue the story of Star Wars: The Clone Wars with a spin-off series. The streaming platform will debut Star Wars: The Bad Batch in 2021. The animated series will follow the elite and experimental clones of the Bad Batch, who were introduced in the Clone Wars, as they find their way in a rapidly changing galaxy in the aftermath of the Clone War. The announcement comes 2 months after the conclusion of the Clone Wars final season. Now, I mentioned on this podcast before that I watched the first, probably 2 seasons of the Clone Wars. That's when it was available on Netflix. And I stopped, which was a big mistake, because when I decided I wanted to go back to pick it up again, it was too late. It had gone to Disney Plus. Obviously, this wasn't that long ago. And now I have to get Disney Plus if I want to watch the Clone Wars, the rest of it. So maybe I will eventually. We'll see. Here's a quote. Giving new and existing fans the final chapter of Star Wars: The Clone Wars has been our honor at Disney Plus, and we are overjoyed by the global response to this landmark series, said Agnes Chu, Senior Vice President of Content at Disney Plus. She continues, while the Clone Wars may have come to its conclusion, our partnership with the groundbreaking storytellers and artists at Lucasfilm Animation is only beginning. We are thrilled to bring Dave Filoni's vision to life through the next adventures of the Bad Batch, end quote. Now, the Bad Batch is a unique squad of clones who vary genetically from their cohorts in the clone army, with each possessing a singular skill that makes them extraordinarily effective soldiers. Following the end of the Clone War, they take on mercenary missions while struggling to stay afloat and find a new purpose. The series is one of several Star Wars properties on Disney+, including The Mandalorian, which debuted when the service launched in November of 2019. There's going to be an upcoming live-action series centered on Obi-Wan Kenobi, and that's going to be played by Ewan McGregor. That's a good regular old gig for him. And based on a Rogue One character called Casan Andor, which is Diego Luna. Now, Rogue One is a movie that I have to confess I have not watched. Again, when I finally was going to get around to watching it, it was on Netflix. I missed it. And so now, guess who's going to have to go to Disney Plus to see it? So, and everyone tells me that's the best Star Wars movie since The Empire Strikes Back. That's what my Star Wars heads tell me. And that's what my partner Joan tells me. And like I say, pretty much like Jules in Pulp Fiction, that's what she thinks. So pretty much that's what I think. Russian Doll co-creator Leslie Headland is also developing a series centered on female characters in the Star Wars universe. Okay, here's my 2 cents. Well, I'm sure this is fantastic news for Star Wars fans. I mean, I know a lot of Star Wars fans. I'm a Star Wars fan, but I'm not a Star Wars head. Okay, I'm not somebody who's going to follow Star Wars wherever I can go to get it. But I saw Star Wars, the original Star Wars, when it debuted in 1977. I was 14 years old on the biggest screen at that time in the DC area, the Uptown Theater, and it blew my mind. And it's one of those few movies, I can count them on one hand, that I saw in the theater where I was stunned. I came out of there just like I'd been transported. So I'm a big fan of Star Wars, and it's a monumental franchise, and it means a lot to me. However, I'm not a Star Wars head. And I think the Star Wars head is a strong brand, but it's not an expanding brand. Maybe I'm wrong on that. Disney has the best marketing team, they can afford, I'll put it that way, the best marketing team in the world. So they may have research. They do have research that I don't have. Not a may about it. They do have research that I don't have. But I don't think it's expanding. I think it's much like the Trump base. And I would suggest that Disney might be pushing the interplanetary envelope just a mite too far. Now, I realize Disney paid a lot of money to Lucasfilms for the rights to the IP. However, I think they're in no danger of not recovering that investment. Now, I realize they made the investment not just to break even. They have to make a profit. I get it. And $4.05 billion, which was the reported price that they paid, is no chump change. It's a bundle of money. So I get it. But the question is, since all this stuff is going to go on Disney Plus, they're not releasing these as big budget movie theater pictures. They are on Disney Plus. How many more subscribers do they expect to attract with this additional content? Now, I understand that they reported that in March of this year, pre-pandemic, they had 54.5 million subscribers. Now, I don't know what that leaves them on their bottom line. And they probably picked up a few more because everyone was locked down. So maybe this is the best business model. And I don't know what I'm talking about. Disney has done quite well without the advice of Howard Fletcher, okay? But how much Star Wars is too much Star Wars? I guess that's the question I'm asking. Because they are coming out with a lot of Star Wars stuff in a short period of time. And who's going to watch this stuff? And really, it's not important if they watch it because it's a subscription. You know, it's important that they keep their membership and they attract membership subscribers, that is, to see Star Wars. And I'm wondering if that's just a diminishing market. I don't know. I guess we'll see. But I think that Disney is going to find that they're going to have to diversify their offering just a little bit more. a little bit more from Marvel and Star Wars and Disney to a little bit of something else. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll see. Next, I'm going to tell you a little bit about we're going to talk a little bit about the theater shutdowns worldwide and what that means for streaming. And also, there may be a little news from our folks over at Amazon Prime Video. So, get settled in. If you're driving, listen to me, drive safely. If you're at home, go get some refreshments, take a bathroom break. We're going to pay some bills, and I'll be back in a moment. Don't go away. Thanks for listening. All right. You going to? It's not open, man. It's not open. We are back, and for a long time, seems like ever since I've been doing this podcast almost, because I started doing it in February, I've been talking about coronavirus, and we've been talking about shutdowns. And we started to reopen worldwide. Other parts of the world kind of started to reopen before we did, of course, especially in the Far East. But now cinemas in Hong Kong are closing their doors again. Wednesday night, they decided in Hong Kong to shut down the theaters again because they're suffering a third wave of the deadly coronavirus, COVID-19. The move was in part a wave of new measures. They announced it Monday evening by Chief Executive Carrie Lam in response to the new surge in COVID-19 cases. New social distancing measures will halt restaurant dining from 6 p.m. until 5 a.m. every day and make mask wearing mandatory on public transport at all times. The maximum size of group gatherings, which had been expanded to 50 people in recent weeks, will be reduced back down to just 4 people. After weeks without any cases of local transmission of the coronavirus, recent days have seen numbers climb again. The epidemic is presumed to have been restarted by imported cases that went undetected. Now they have taken root again in the community. A second wave, remember I said this was their third wave. A second wave occurred in mid-March, almost entirely due to imported cases and repatriation flights. Now, why am I reporting this on the good old TV podcast? Well, those of you who listen to me regularly know, because the more this happens worldwide, the less inclined movie studios will be to release their pictures that are ready to go, like Unhinged. So as their revenues diminish to a trickle, more and more they're going to be open to releasing these new movies on video on demand. So let me get back to Russell Crowe. Russell Crowe's new movie Unhinged is scheduled to be released in theaters here in the U.S. on July the 31st. Now I'm going to make the prediction here. I like to make predictions. I'm going to make the prediction here that it will be on video on demand before mid-August. Solstice Studios, and that's who's distributing that movie, they're not a huge distributor. I think it's safe to say that many of you haven't even heard of Solstice before. They're going to need to make a decision. And if this flick waits until it's safe to go into the theaters before it gets released to the theaters, it's going to run into competition that I don't think they want to see. It's going to run into Mulan. It's going to run into Tenet. And later on this year, if things clear up going into November, it's going to be No Time to Die, which is the Bond film. Now, I believe people are going to be a little bit more selective about the movies they see on the big screen. So, pre-COVID, people who might go to see any of those big tentpole movies I just mentioned, Mulan, Tenet, No Time to Die, they might go see Unhinged as well the next weekend. But I don't know if people are going to go to movies back to back anymore or go see, they're going to decide, do I want to, there may be people who don't even go to see Mulan, Tenet, and No Time to Die. They're going to say, I'm going to pick one of the three, or maybe two of the three. Maybe. I don't know if everyone's going to see all three of those movies. There'll be some daredevils out there, but, I think people are going to be more selective. So are you going to risk exposure to COVID-19 to go see Unhinged? I doubt it. Sorry, Russ. Sorry, Russ. But if I had to take a risk, I'm choosing a Christopher Nolan movie. I'm not, going to select a Derek Bort movie. That's the director of Unhinged. I had to look that up. Okay. So I truly hope I'm wrong about this. I really do. And I hope this virus gets under control quickly. But I'm not holding my breath, people. And so what I'm saying to you is that, and I'll continue saying this, that streaming, we're going through a paradigm shift. We're not going through a phase. We're not going through, we will go through this pandemic. And if everybody does what they're supposed to do as best they can, hopefully we'll all get through this thing. But on the other side of this thing, it's not going to be business as usual. I don't believe. I think it's going to be TV. Howard's going to have a whole lot more content to talk about on this podcast than I did when I first started this thing. So we'll see. But remember, Unhinged is coming to a small screen near you in less than a month. You can bet on it. Here is some breaking news from Amazon. Amazon has made a quick renewal decision on Hannah. The tech and retail giant has picked up a third season of the thriller less than 2 weeks after the second season's July 3rd premiere. Like other streaming platforms, Amazon doesn't release viewing data for its series. But the company says the show has performed strongly across the world in its first week. Here's a quote. "I'm absolutely thrilled to be able to give Hannah a third season," said writer and executive producer David Farr. He continues, "When we set out on this journey, I had in my mind that I would excavate Hannah's past, challenge her in entirely new ways, and answer the question, can she ever belong? I'm truly grateful to Amazon and to NBCU, which is NBC Universal, that we are able to continue that vision. I am also deeply indebted to Esme Creed Miles and I can never pronounce her name, Mireille Enos. That's the star of The Killing. Mireille Enos, that's her name, for their continuing commitment to an enormous talent as we take Hannah and Marissa into new and unexplored terrain. It's going to be an exciting third act," end quote. Now, I saw the first season of Hannah, which was very good. Haven't made time to watch season 2 yet, but since they renewed it, I'm sure a lot of people are watching it. I didn't realize that the series was based on a movie. Probably I was one of the few people who didn't know that. But the movie had Saoirse Ronan and Kate Blanchett in it, and it wasn't bad. Obviously, they made a series out of it. It was darn good. I don't know if I would have seen it in the theater, though, but it was good. Very entertaining on television, so that's why the series, it's not surprising to me that they want to continue with it. I thought season 1 was good. The series from NBC Universal International Studios and Working Title Television and Amazon Studios is based, here I go, on the 2011 movie of the same name. It stars Creed Miles as Hannah, a young woman with special abilities who tries to evade the relentless pursuit of a sinister government agency and tries to unearth the truth behind who she is. Enos, Yasmin Monique Prince, Dermot Mulroney, Anthony Walsh, and Gianna Keir also star. I'm terrible with names, folks. Here's another quote. Quote, "David continues to deliver a series that's elevated and action-packed, with twists you won't see coming and characters you really care about," says Vernon Sanders, co-head of television at Amazon Studios. Continues, "We're very excited to team with NBC Universal to bring our Prime Video customers around the world another season of adventure with Hannah." Now, NBC Universal International Studios President Jeff Rochtell said, "Thanks to David Farr and executive producer Tom Cohn, the wonderful cast and crew of Hannah are delivering 2 smashing seasons, and to Amazon for being the best partner anyone could hope for. Strap in for season 3, end quote. Farr executive produces Hannah with NBCU's International's Tom Cohn, and Marty Aldstein, Becky Clemens, and Scott Neems. The series is part of a lineup of dramas on Amazon Prime Video that also includes Jack Ryan, Bosch, Homecoming, The Boys, Carnival Row, Hunters, Tales from the Loop, among others. All those shows got pretty good reviews. I tried to watch Carnival Row. Just wasn't my cup of tea. But they got another season, so apparently some people watch it. Haven't gotten into Bosch. I love the actors who are in Bosch, but I can't watch everything. I just haven't had time to sit down and watch it. But it's on my queue for one of these days. I'll get to it. Here is some breaking SNL news. Michael Che has set up his own sketch comedy series for HBOMax. The streamer has given the series a 6-episode order. Che will star in the series, with each episode set to tackle a different theme or incident, such as police brutality, unemployment, or falling in love, from a black vantage point. Here's a quote. "I'm really excited to be working on this show with HBOMax," said Che. "It's a project I've been thinking about for a while, and we have a lot of sketches we want to shoot. So please wear your masks so we can go into production," end quote. The series is produced by Universal TV, and Che, Lorne Michaels, and Aaron Doyle are the executive producers. Let me tell you something about Lorne Michaels. To his credit, I mean, he does pick this talent out for, to be on SNL. But I'll be darned if it seems like every single project that I've noticed that, except for Tina Fey, that I know of, he seems to be an executive producer on everything that these people go to. Now, I'm not saying he's leeching on them. They may have been able, he's probably the reason why a lot of these projects were greenlit. He's definitely the reason why a lot of these people have the types of careers they have. So I'm just saying it's interesting that he attaches himself, or he doesn't attach himself. He is attached to these projects. Certainly not a coincidence. Here's another quote. "Michael brings a distinct comedic perspective as he illustrates the uncomfortable truths among multiple topics," says Susanna Makos, Executive Vice President of Original Comedy and Animation for HBO Max. "We look forward to sharing his unique vision and necessary point of view with our audience," end quote. Che is best known for his work on Saturday Night Live, where he began working as a writer in 2013. There you go, with the Lorne Michaels connection. That's, like I said, he's responsible a lot for these people's careers, or at least this level of career, not for, obviously, their talent. They arrived with that. He eventually rose to co-head writer and currently serves as the co-host of Weekend Update, alongside fellow co-head writer Colin Jost. In addition to his stand-up comedy career, Che's other on-screen credits include time on The Daily Show and co-hosting the Emmy Awards with Colin Jost. So those of you who've listened to me, hear me come on here time and time again and talk about original content on these streaming services. And HBO Max gets it. Like I said, HBO Max, in my assessment, is the great white shark out there in these streaming services. Netflix is the king. And I don't think anyone's going to touch Netflix for quite a while, because they do it well and they do it on a worldwide scale. However, HBO Max, the people at HBO, when they launched HBO Max, they did it with open eyes, knowing that they've been able to develop this prestige television on several levels. And now they're taking that to streaming, and they're doing quite a good job of mixing it up. They are. And so HBO Max is something that I think I'm going to put in my mix. I'm still stuck to the cable. And when I cut my cord, HBO Max is going to be one that I probably will subscribe to. I'm not going to recommend anyone do that because I'm not getting sponsorship from HBO. But that I think that they seem to know what they're doing. Apple and Disney certainly have the capital to do it, and they're getting around to doing it. Hulu is doing it really well too. But a lot of these people, like the Peacock, and even a Peacock, I on the show, I've reported they've, invested in a lot of different properties. They certainly have their competition cut out for them. And that's why I said that streamers that came into this earlier than some of those others, like the DC universe, probably are not going to be able to make it. They're not going to be able to hang. DCU streaming has already sold off some of their properties. And I think that as you know, they're going to just produce content for other places. They may keep their streaming service to rerun other episodes and to launch different things, experiment with new content, but I don't think they're going to be a major player. Okay, next, there's been some breaking news at Showtime. I'm going to tell you about that. There's some news about Survivor, and I got a bunch of stuff to say about Nick Cannon. That's all coming up next. Please go get some refreshments, take that bathroom break, drive carefully, and I'll be right back after this. Keep listening.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
All right. Did you ever watch that show? You like Jim Carrey, though. All right, I'm back. And, Kidding. That's the show starring Jim Carrey that had 2 seasons. It's been canceled at Showtime. The show aired its 2nd season earlier this year on the premium cabler. And I didn't watch it. I watched the 1st season. And I'll get to that after I give you a little bit more details about this. Here's a quote. After 2 seasons, Kidding has concluded its run on Showtime. The network said in a statement, "We are very proud to have aired this imaginative, critically acclaimed, and rewarding series. And we would like to thank Jim Carrey, Dave Holstein, Mark Aguilar, and the entire cast and crew for their brilliant and tireless work." End quote. Now, here's what the thing was about. Carrey starred in The Dramedy, and it's a dramedy, as an iconic children's television host named Jeff Pickles. And he was famous the world over for his kind and gentle ways with children. But, and there's always a but, this guy, Jeff Pickles, grapples with serious issues, both personal and professional, behind the scenes. It also starred Judy Greer. Love Judy Greer. Catherine Keener, who did a good job as his sister, by the way. Frank Langella, who in the later part of his career, or latter part of his career, has become quite the character actor. It's a shock to me, maybe not to those who are more familiar with him, but ever since Nixon Frost, he has blown me away. Cole Allen, Juliette Morris, and Justin Kirk. They round out the cast. Now, Carrey executive produced, surprise, surprise, as well, along with Jason Bateman. I didn't realize he was part of this project, but he is. And there were several others. It was a group effort. The show marked Carrey's first regular television role in over 20 years. It also marked another collaboration between Carrey and Gondry, with Gondry having directed Carrey in the film Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Now, speaking at TCA Summer Press Tour in 2018, Carrey said what drew him to the role was the idea of identity. Here's a quote. "The search for identity is a theme that has always been attractive to me. There's definitely something in this piece that calls to me." End quote. Carrey went on to say that the show touches on the idea of, quote, "trying to hang on to the idea of self," end quote. Now, like I said, I watched season 1, and I give it for me, there were a lot of things that you could look at this show and say, standing alone, were very good. I mean, there were some I would say, dream sequence parts of it, where the special effects and the visuals were quite good, actually stunning. The acting, Judy Greer, Jim Carrey, Kathleen Keener, and like I said, Frank Langella, they all did very good. They had good scenes. There would be different scenes in this show that were good. But taken all together, it was weird. Taken all together, it was an identity piece, like Jim Carrey said. But for my taste, it wasn't entertaining. I DVR'd it because I knew it was coming up. I'm a Jim Carrey fan. I'm a fan of his. Let me say it the correct way. I'm a fan of his latter work. I was a fan of his early work when I was younger, especially when he was on Living Color and some of his stand-up. When he started getting off into The Mask and other things, not so much my cup of tea. I respected his physical comedy. The skill of the physical comedy. It didn't necessarily make me laugh, but I respected the skill that it took to do the things he was doing with his body and his face. But, I do like him in these dramatic roles. I think he, unfortunately, much like, say, Jerry Lewis, was hard for some people, some audiences to take seriously, because when you make such a splash in physical, wacky, slapstick type of comedy humor, it's hard to be taken seriously as a dramatic actor. Very few people have been able to make that transition. Steve Martin is probably the one person who's probably done it the best. But Steve Martin, besides his wild and crazy guy phase, never wasn't as much of a slapstick guy as, say, Jerry Lewis or Jim Carrey. When season 1 of this thing ended, I thought that was it. I thought it was a one-shot deal, and it was interesting, and it was cute, and it was good, and I thought, okay, Jim Carrey did that project. And when I saw that they were doing a season 2, I had no desire to go back to that. So that's why I didn't watch it. And I don't think that they pulled the numbers that they want. I don't think the season 1 pulled the numbers that they wanted it to pull, and season 2 probably did even fewer numbers, because it was more of a passion project, I think, for Jim Carrey. And at this point in his career, he's earned it. If you can get a show made that helps you to identify some things, like he said it was a piece that helped him deal with the idea of self. Good for you, Jim Carrey. But I can see why it didn't last more than 2 seasons. All right, enough of that. Here is some breaking Survivor news. CBS is no longer planning to air Survivor season 41. That's right, folks. 41 this fall. Now, what a lot of trades have learned, I got this one out of Variety, so I'll just say Variety learned that CBS has pulled the long-running reality competition series from its fall 2021 lineup. Production on the season, which will take place in Fiji, was delayed back in March due to the coronavirus pandemic. So those of you who are big Survivor fans, relax. It's not because they're canceling the series. It's just because they had to delay production because, I'm no epidemiologist, but from what I've seen of what goes on Survivor, not quite social distancing. Okay. So that had to be stopped. So it'll come back probably the next season. According to an individual with knowledge of the production, so we got this confidential source, CBS and officials in Fiji are still evaluating the best time to start production due to the heightened health and safety concerns involved. A lot of bodily fluid could possibly get passed back and forth when you're in a mud wrestling type of challenge or whatever. I don't know. The Amazing Race will now take Survivor's 8 p.m. time slot on Wednesday night, moving up an hour. So I guess you can stay pretty good distance in The Amazing Race. I guess it's couples, so that's much safer than the Survivor thing. SEAL Team will now air at 9, and SWAT which was originally going to be held for mid-season, will now air Wednesdays at 10 this fall. So SWAT fans, you won't have to wait as long. It's going to come on this fall at 10 p.m. on Wednesdays. Survivor is now the first show to be pulled from the fall schedule since all the broadcast networks unveiled their lineups over the past few months. CBS revealed their schedule in May, which banked heavily on being able to return to production on most of their scripted shows, despite production still being mostly shut down because of the pandemic. The move is also the latest for season 32 of The Amazing Race. That's right, folks. 41 for Survivor, 32 for The Amazing Race, which was originally set to debut on the network this spring. Now, it was previously reported on this podcast as well that season 33 was 2 weeks into shooting before being shut down due to the outbreak of the pandemic. With SWAT moving to the fall, the only shows CBS is currently holding for mid-season are Undercover Boss and the new drama series Clarice, which I'm waiting for, about FBI agent Clarice Starling in the years after the events of Silence of the Lambs. CBS is planning to debut just 2 new shows this fall. Be Positive from the Chuck Lorre camp and the reboot of The Equalizer starring Queen Latifah, who I guess is going to be kicking some ass on that show. I'll have to wait to see that one. And finally, here is some unfortunate Nick Cannon news. First, let me say that I did a segment on Nick Cannon a few shows back talking about how he always proves me wrong because he'll do this show. And I said, this show is going to suck because it sounds terrible. It'll never be successful. And lo and behold, it gets great ratings. The Masked Singer was one of those shows. In that light, listen to this. Viacom CBS is ending its long-running relationship with Nick Cannon after he made anti-Semitic comments on his podcast. In the June 30th episode of Cannon's Class, the actor and TV host interviewed Professor Griff, a rapper who was part of Public Enemy before leaving the group after making anti-Semitic remarks. On the podcast, Cannon said, "Black people are the quote-unquote true Hebrews," and talked about anti-Semitic conspiracy theories involving the Rothschild family. Here's a quote. "It's never hate speech. You can't be anti-Semitic when we are the Semitic people," Cannon said. "When we are the same people who they want us to be, that's our birthright. We are the true Hebrews," end quote. A Viacom CBS spokesperson released a statement saying that the company's relationship with Cannon is now terminated. Here's a quote. "Viacom CBS condemns bigotry of any kind, and we categorically denounce all forms of anti-Semitism. We have spoken with Nick Cannon about an episode of his podcast, Cannon's Class on YouTube, which promoted hateful speech and spread anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. While we support ongoing education and dialogue in the fight against bigotry, we are deeply troubled that Nick has failed to acknowledge or apologize for perpetuating anti-Semitism, and we are terminating our relationship with him. We are committed to doing better in our response to incidents of anti-Semitism, racism, and bigotry. Viacom CBS will have further announcements on our efforts to combat hate of all kinds," the company said. That's end quote. On Monday, Cannon said on Twitter and Facebook that he has, quote, "no hate in my heart, nor malice intentions." Nor malice intentions. Okay. Malicious would probably be what he meant. "And don't condone hate speech." He also said that he holds himself, quote, "accountable for this moment," end quote, and takes full responsibility for his actions. Late Tuesday, the host began retweeting scores of messages of support from fans, some of whom condemned Viacom CBS for severing ties with him, and some of the fans expressed concern for the future of the long-running MTV sketch comedy series Wild 'N Out, which Cannon has hosted since 2005, and had a recent expansion to the sister network, VH1. Cannon also retweeted a number of his critics who called him the N-word. The host has had a relationship with Viacom since he was an actor on Nickelodeon in the 90s and into the 2000s with Wild 'N Out. More recently, he's been known as the host of The Masked Singer on Fox, which I thought was going to bomb, and hosted America's Got Talent on NBC from 2009 to 2016. He's also launching a syndicated daytime talk show in September with Dembar Mercury. Well, those were some unfortunate remarks that he made on that show. And I don't know what to say about Nick Cannon, except for that I was never a fan of his. I thought he was, as 50 Cent called him, corny. So that's why most of the time I project, that's why I said a lot of the things, that's not the only reason, but that probably factored in why I thought a lot of his projects would flop, just because I personally didn't care for him as an entertainer. He didn't do it for me. I'm not quite sure what this was about, except for it's, when you say things on the air, and especially when I think you're saying things, I don't know if you understand what you're saying. Professor Griff, I'm a big Public Enemy fan. Professor Griff kind of talked his way out of that group by making some anti-Semitic remarks that I don't agree with, and rightfully so. He left. And so if you bring someone on your show who is apt to lead you into a conversation that you shouldn't be in, it's not good. It's not very, very wise. And if he does believe the things that he said and decided he was going to air his opinion about them, then I guess he should have known that this would happen, as it should. So, we'll see what happens in the future, because, I mentioned all the projects he has lined up, and I don't think this is going to be the last network or employer that's going to drop him. We will see what happens with Nick Cannon, and I will keep you posted on that. Next, I'm going to tell you about the return of someone else who now I think what she does things she does tend to be successful, but again, not one of my favorite people. The return of Tyra Banks when we get back. Go get some refreshments, and I'll see you soon. All right, we're back. Got a lot to cover before the end of the show, so let me get through this really quickly. Okay, Tyra Banks is twirling into the ballroom, not actually dancing, but hosting. That's right, she's going to be in the upcoming season of ABC's Dancing with the Stars. Banks' new gig comes after news broke Monday that longtime host Tom Bergeron and Erin Andrews are going to be departing the show. Here's a quote: "I've been a fan of DWTS since its beginning. The fun mixed with raw emotion, seeing celebrities push past their comfort zones, the sizzling dance performances, it's always transported me to my days of turning it up 10 notches on the catwalk," says Banks, who will also serve as an executive producer, surprise, surprise, in addition to host, end quote. Oh my goodness. In her statement, Banks honored the original host Bergeron, saying, "Tom has set a powerful stage, and I'm excited to continue the legacy and put on my executive producer and hosting hats." Okay, end quote. News of Bergeron and Andrews' exit came suddenly on Monday evening. Bergeron has been with the show for 28 seasons. I didn't even know if it was on for 28 seasons. My God, since its inception. And Andrews has been co-hosting with Bergeron since season 18. So she's been on for 10 seasons. Bergeron tweeted that he was informed by ABC he would not be asked back to the show for the 29th season. His tweet indicated that the shakeup came as a surprise. Quote, "Just informed that Dancing with the Stars will be continuing without me," he tweeted. "It's been an incredible 15-year run and the most unexpected gift of my career. I'm grateful for that and for the lifelong friendships made. That said, now what am I supposed to do with all these glitter masks?" End quote. Okay, that was a good one, Tom. Here's a quote: "Tom has been an integral part of the ABC family for nearly 2 decades, from hosting America's Funniest Home Videos to Dancing with the Stars. We are grateful for all he and Erin have done to make dancing a success," said Carly Burke, president of ABC Entertainment. "As we gear up for the show's 29th season, we can't wait to welcome Tyra Banks to our dancing stage. Tyra is an award-winning multi-hyphenate, oh Jesus, whose fierce female prowess and influence among many industries have made an indelible mark. Her fresh take on America's favorite dancing competition will surely bring more than a smize to fans everywhere, end quote. Oh, boy. All right, well, in addition to Banks, Dancing with the Stars is getting a creative refresh for its 29th season, according to ABC, which did not provide any more details on the changes for the upcoming fall season, but they're going to reboot it, I guess. The network has not disclosed how season 29 will be produced in light of industry-wide shutdowns with the coronavirus pandemic. But as they say on the dance floor, the show must go on. So we will see. I will keep you abreast on what's happening with Dancing with the Stars. But here is the breaking news that I had to report because it just came over the wire. Nick Cannon strikes back. Actor and TV host Nick Cannon has struck back at Viacom CBS hours after he was dropped by the media giant for making anti-Semitic comments on his podcast. Cannon has asked for ownership of his MTV and VH1 series Wild and Out, as well as an apology from the company. In a lengthy statement posted to his Facebook page early Wednesday, Cannon wrote, "If I have furthered the hate speech, I wholeheartedly apologize. But now I am the one making demands. I demand full ownership of my billion-dollar Wild and Out brand that I created, and they will continue to misuse and destroy without my leadership. I demand that the hate and backdoor bullying cease, and while we are at it, now that the truth is out, I demand the apology." Exclamation point, end quote. In the post, which is titled Truth and Reconciliation, reconciliation, okay, Cannon began... I'm sorry. Cannon began by noting that he is, quote, deeply saddened in a moment so close to reconciliation that the powers that be misuse an important moment for us to all grow closer together and learn more about each other, end quote. He writes that in one sentence, and then the other sentence, he's like, I demand this because you're going to mess it up, and it's a billion-dollar industry. So I demand an apology and that you give me this thing, but we could have all gotten along. Okay, here's another quote. Instead, the moment was stolen and hijacked to make an example out of an outspoken black man. I will not be bullied, silenced, or continuously oppressed by any organization, group, or corporation. I am disappointed that Viacom does not understand or respect the power of the black community, end quote, he continued. All right. And I'm just reporting the news. I don't want to make it a big thing. I just have, as a black American, just a schlub doing a podcast, okay? And I'm older than Nick Cannon, so maybe I have a little bit more experience behind me, and who knows? Maybe I've been beaten down by the man, but I doubt it. I just know that in the entertainment business, you know, if you say the wrong thing, or if you say something that the networks don't want you to hear, you're going to get fired, man. Bill Maher got fired. Everyone gets fired, and then you just come back. You know, nothing was stolen from you. You're living a blessed life, Nick Cannon. And bullied or silenced? I don't know. Anyway, we'll finish. The performer alleges that Viacom CBS recently banned, quote, all advertisement that supported George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, who we are still seeking justice for, end quote. Cannon also claims he personally reached out to Viacom CBS chair Sherry Redstone to have a conversation of reconciliation and actually apologize if I said anything that pained or hurt her and her community, end quote, and he received no response. Viacom CBS claims that Cannon did not attempt to connect with Redstone. Quote, it's absolutely untrue that Nick Cannon reached out to the chair of Viacom CBS, a Viacom CBS spokesperson told Variety. In regard to the claim about ads related to the deaths of George Floyd and Taylor, the Viacom CBS rep directed Variety in a statement in a July 12th Wall Street Journal story in which a company spokesperson said that the ad block was related to a show called Revenge Prank, and that, quote, we didn't want to be insensitive by placing ads for it next to important and serious topics such as Black Lives Matter. This is standard practice we use with our media agency to ensure that our ads don't come across as tone deaf or disrespectful, end quote. Cannon goes on to list his achievements over the past 20 years, including executive producing and hosting Fox's The Masked Singer. Quote, my hope and original goal was to use this moment to show healing and acceptance and prayed that Viacom would use their powers for good. Instead, I am now receiving death threats, hate messages, calling me an ungrateful N-word, and beyond, said Cannon, who was retweeting messages in support from fans as well as critics calling him the N-word well into the early hours of Wednesday. Quote, Viacom's goal to keep me from providing for my family and lineage will be foiled. They can try to kick me while I'm down or force me to kiss the master's feet in public for shame and ridicule, but instead I stand firm on my square with my fist in the air, repeating the mantra, you can't fire a boss, end quote. In his statement, Cannon also highlighted an, quote, outpouring of love and support from the Jewish community, noting that he has spoken with rabbis, clergy, and professors and coworkers who have offered to help him. Quote, I'm excited to announce that I've been invited to Israel, which is a lifelong dream where I will receive teachings, lessons, and truths about Jewish history, said Cannon. As someone who is in pursuit for my PhD in theology and divinity and just received a degree in criminal justice from the great Howard University, this will be an enriching, enlightening, and overall exciting trip, end quote. A Viacom CBS spokesperson confirmed on Tuesday that it was severing ties with Cannon after it emerged that the performer had said on his podcast that black people are the true Hebrews, in addition to discussing anti-Semitic conspiracy theories involving the Rothschild family. Okay, let me stop here. This is Howard speaking. I'm not speaking for black people. I'm speaking for Howard Fletcher. Okay. Now, I'm a Washingtonian, and our NFL team just is in the process of changing its name. That's what this reminds me of. And you have people who are lifelong. I've never liked the name. I'm a big fan of the team. Grew up, cheering for the team. The Washington football team is my team. Okay. However, the name is repugnant. And that's my opinion. But it's also the opinion of the majority of indigenous Americans who find the name to be a slur. Now, have they produced people who are indigenous, who are considered by some to be called Native Americans, who have said the name doesn't bother them? Absolutely. But it doesn't mean that the name isn't a slur and that it was repugnant. And it bothers me, especially coming from another black person, to hear him say, lots of Jewish people have my back. It doesn't matter if what you said is a slur to the majority or a decent number, or historically what you're talking about has been used to persecute Jews, which the Rothschild conspiracy has been used, especially by somebody we know with a square mustache in Germany. So unless you understand that, you shouldn't use it. You shouldn't say it. And if you do say it on the air and you're Nick Cannon and you get fired, you should be lesson learned. You shouldn't say, in my opinion, oh, I'm a boss, you can't fire me, when they just fired you, dude. Yeah, they can fire you because they're not writing you checks from your bank account. It's coming from CBS Viacom. So guess what? You're not a boss. And I don't mean that as a bad thing. Look, like I said, I'm always coming from a point of view. I'm just a guy behind a microphone who is not any type of mogul or pundit. Okay? Just a guy with an opinion. But it truly bothers me as an adult black person as well, Nick Cannon, that you can't see that. And that saying you want to come from a position of reconciliation while meanwhile not only have you talked about a conspiracy theory with the Rothschilds, but now you're further talking about them conspiring to take money out of your children's mouths and knock down a black man from being who's a boss. Come on. And if you think you got to go to Israel to learn something because you might not understand something, if you accept the trip, then you're admitting that what you said was not good and that you need to learn something. So what you need to do is apologize and not ask for an apology, it seems to me. But what do I know? Here's the end of the article. Here's a quote, and it's the same thing they said in the last one. Quote, while we support ongoing education and dialogue in the fight against bigotry, we are deeply troubled that Nick has failed to acknowledge or apologize for perpetuating anti-Semitism, and we are terminating our relationship with him. We are committed to doing better in our response to incidents of anti-Semitism and racism and bigotry. CBS Viacom will have further announcements on our efforts to combat hate of all kinds, the company said. So, Nick, I hope you guys work it out, but you need to take a breath and go talk to some folks and before you start making public statements, because you're not helping things right now. You're not. So on that high note, I want to thank you for listening to the GSMC Television Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'd like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us. Also, if you can please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, would really like it. And please, look, remember to email me at podcasthoward@gmail.com, especially if I make comments that you agree with or you take offense to, or you would like me to, like to get your side of the opinion or the issue stated on the air. As long as it's something that is not profane, I read all emails on the air. So please write me. I would love to hear a contrary point of view, or if you even agree with me, but you are much more articulate than I am, there's a high probability of that, then I will gladly read your email on the air. So please write me. Also, if there's some shows you want me to cover or something a topic you'd like me to discuss, always happy to take suggestions. Listen, I know we're on some strange and challenging times right now. The only way we're going to pull through this, folks, is if we do it together. We are still in a worldwide pandemic, so please remember to do all the suggestions from the experts, folks. Okay? From the doctors. Wash your hands. Limit your close and personal contact with people if you can. Distance. Don't do anything social if you don't have to do it. And wear a mask when you go out of the house. Wear a mask when you're out in public. It's only so we can get through this thing quicker. That's all we want. And okay, so with that said, have a safe and fun weekend. Don't make any comments about anything you don't understand. Just go stream a few movies and have fun, okay? Have a safe and fun weekend. Until we meet again, stream with care. Jack and I love you guys. Be kind to one another. And I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Television Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.